Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's keep week 17 going with today's Third Age Thursday, a time for us to revisit some familiar and sometimes not so familiar stories from the Third Age. Now today, as we start a new series of today's Tolkien Times, we're going to spend some time with the dwarves. And we'll start with part of Appendix A3, Durin's Folk, even though some of it starts well before the Third Age. Concerning the beginning of the dwarves, strange tales are told both by the Eldar and by the dwarves themselves. But since these things lie far back beyond our days, little is said of them here. Durin is the name that the dwarves used for the eldest of the 7 fathers of their race, and the ancestor of all the kings of the Longbeards. He slept alone, until in the deeps of time and the awakening of that people, he came to Azanulbizar, and in the caves above Kheled Zaram in the east of the Misty Mountains, he made his dwelling, where afterwards were the mines of Moria, renowned in song. There he lived so long that he was known far and wide as Durin the Deathless. Yet in the end, he died before the elder days had passed, and his tomb was in Khazad-dûm. But his line never failed, and 5 times an heir was born in his house so like to his forefather that he received the name of Durin. He was indeed held by the dwarves to be the Deathless that returned, for they have many strange tales and beliefs concerning themselves and their fate in the world. After the end of the First Age, the power and wealth of Khazad-dûm was much increased, for it was enriched by many people and much lore and craft when the ancient cities of Nagrad and Belagost in the Blue Mountains were ruined at the breaking of Thangorodrim. The power of Moria endured throughout the dark years, and the dominion of Sauron. For though Eregion was destroyed and the gates of Moria were shut, the halls of Khazad-dûm were too deep and strong and filled with a people too numerous and valiant for Sauron to conquer from without. Thus its wealth remained long unravished, though its people began to dwindle. It came to pass that in the middle of the Third Age, Durin was again its king, being the 6th of that name. The power of Sauron, servant of Morgoth, was then again growing in the world, though the shadow in the forest that looked towards Moria was not yet known for what it was. All evil things were stirring. The dwarves delved deep at that time, seeking beneath Barazinbar for Mithril, the metal beyond price that was becoming yearly ever harder to win. Thus they roused from sleep a thing of terror, that flying from Thangorodrim had lain hidden at the foundations of the earth since the coming of the host of the west, a Balrog of Morgoth. Durin was slain by it, and the year after, Nain the First, his son, and then the glory of Moria passed, and its people were destroyed or fled far away. Most of those that escaped made their way into the north, and Thrain the First, Nain's son, came to Erebor, the lonely mountain, near the eastern eaves of Mirkwood, and there he began new works and became king under the mountain. In Erebor he found the great jewel, the Arkenstone, heart of the mountain. But Thorin the First, his son, removed and went into the far north to the Grey Mountains, where most of Durin's folk were now gathering, for those mountains were rich and little explored. But there were dragons in the wastes beyond, and after many years they became strong again and multiplied, and they made war on the dwarves and plundered their works. At last, Dain the First, together with Thror, his second son, was slain at the doors of his hall by a great cold drake. Not long after Durin's folk abandoned the Grey Mountains. Gror, Dain's son, went away with many followers to the Iron Hills, but Thror, Dain's heir, with Borin, his father's brother, and the remainder of the people, returned to Erebor. To the great hall of Thrain, Thror brought back the Arkenstone, and he and his folk prospered and became rich, and they had the friendship of all men that dwelt near. For they made not only things of wonder and beauty, but weapons and armor of great worth, and there was great traffic of ore between them and their kin in the Iron Hills. Thus the Northmen, who lived between Kelduin, river running, and Codadin, Redwater, became strong and drove back all enemies from the east, and the dwarves lived in plenty, and there was feasting and song in the halls of Erebor. So the rumor of the wealth of Erebor spread abroad and reached the ears of the dragons. And at last, Smaug the Golden, greatest of the dragons of his day, arose and without warning came against King Thror and descended on the mountain in flames. It was not long before all that realm was destroyed, and the town of Dale nearby was ruined and deserted. But Smaug entered into the great hall and lay there upon a bed of gold. From the sack and the burning, many of Thror's kin escaped, and last of all, from the halls by a secret door, came Thror himself and his son Thrain II. They went away south with their family into long and homeless wandering. With them went also a small company of their kinsmen and faithful followers. Some interesting bits here, especially in light of what we know of the creation of the dwarves. Indeed, Durin slept alone, but did you know that all the other dwarf fathers were put to sleep with their wives with them? Now, Durin was, of course, the one who came upon Kheled Zaram and saw the mysterious stars in the reflection in the shape of a crown. We also see the waking of the Balrog, though I prefer the version of the story the footnote to this suggests, or released from prison. It may well be that it had already been awakened by the malice of Sauron. Yeah, I like that better. We also get the Arkenstone, or the Eorknestan, as we've talked about on the Prancing Pony podcast. Is it a Silmaril? No, but also yes. And then the arrival of Smaug the Golden. Now, there's one thing the appendix will not tell you, and that is that Durin is a name of one of the dwarfs in the Dvergetal, which is part of the Voluspa in the Poetic Edda. Just like many of the other dwarven names, actually just about all of them, not to mention Gandalf. But in that context, the name actually means sleepy. Next, you're going to tell me Thorin means dock or sneezy, but no, I won't do that. Well, folks, that wraps it up for this week's Third Age Thursday. Come back next week for more on Sleepy's folk. I'm Durin's folk, and to find out where I'll go next. In the meantime, please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a whole lot more. And please join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times as I welcome a very special guest for Fandom Friday. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Please follow or subscribe on your podcast apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.